right. Good afternoon, Dr. Patterson. It's good to see you again.
Well, thank you very much. Good to be here.
So today I was hoping to talk for a few minutes with you about the importance of exercise, not only for health in general, but in particular, exercise for the cancer patient. And I'd love to hear some of your own story with exercise that would help the patients and be very inspirational for them.
Okay. I think you know me well enough that I tend to go back in history on every question. For the last million years, we have had the life of animals. Most of the time in the last million years, we graze and everything we do is eating, eating, eating. But then 10,000 years ago, we became, quote, civilized. That's when we began to slow up. We had time, we grew crops, but our diet really made us become heavier with obesity. And by that part, Sandy, we had a different set of health problems. Before 10,000 years, we had good shape because we were exercising every day just to stay alive, grazing out there, hunting, and then feeding. But then 10,000 years ago, that changed, and that brought in obesity. We became overweight, and we forgot the importance of exercise that had taken place for the last 90,000 years. So we're paying a price for that now. And what I've learned with my own history, I found out that early on in life, I became an exercise fanatic. I was teased by this, but instinctively, I felt our bodies were made for movement, not for sitting on a couch watching television. We pay a price in health problems by not exercising. And then I began, after my cancer, I went back and used the exercise as a symbol of survival of the cancer. I said, well, if I'm going to go out with cancer, I'm going to try to exercise and see if it'll have any beneficial effect. And as you know from my medical history, it paid off for me. The more I exercised, within the limits of the cancer, what it permitted me to do, I began to get stronger. I lost 30, 40 pounds, but again, put weighting back on. Then I had to learn how, of course, with your help, the combination of protein, fats, and carbohydrates. And I began to realize that with this new situation of living without a stomach, when I had stomach cancer, they removed my entire stomach up at Sloan Kettering Cancer Hospital in New York City. And then I was faced with a whole new set of problems, the diet. But
so can I just interject? So before you were diagnosed with cancer, you were already an exerciser and you were in good shape. But then you lost weight because of the stomach cancer and the surgery, right?
Well, usually if you have your stomach removed, you lose 30, 40 pounds in the next 6 months. And then, of course, the thing is, my chances of survival were less than 2% because the cancer spread not only there, but down into the abdominal cavity. So they didn't give me much hope.
Okay. So is there something that you started to do right away, for example, right after surgery, maybe even in the hospital, to symbolize to yourself that you could be in good shape and be an exerciser again?
Yes. I think you probably know this story. I wanted to go back into the land of the living outside. Everything on that 6th floor at the hospital in New York was sterile, white. That's it. I got a member of my family to go out. I said, I want some red running shoes, whatever you can find. So they brought in a pair of red running shoes, and I became the laughing stock of everybody on that cancer floor. And the nurses especially said, what is it with you? I said, it's a symbol of an outside world where I want to go. One by one, other members of cancer on that floor, they began getting red running shoes for the same reason. We all wanted to get out of this sterile white environment, get back out in the land of the living, but we need a symbol for that. And the red running shoes became became a big part of that, as you know. Then as time went on, came home, and I began to realize I needed an exercise program more and more in order to improve the quality of life for me. I had a gym I put out in the basement with Nordic track, exercise. Then later got back on the tennis courts again. As you know, Stanford and I had won national championships before we both got sick. I was sick and probably terminal with stomach cancer, and he was sick with probable terminal autoimmune syndrome called Wegener syndrome. And yet for both of us, getting back out of the tennis court not only was being with our friend, but it became a symbol of survival. And so we used that symbolism more and more and more, and it paid off. We began winning national tournaments again, yet we were supposed to have died where we went.
It's so incredible to me, and I just would like to revisit a little bit of the detail back then that I have heard you tell patients when you're mentoring them, you know, for their cancer. I've listened to you. And for one thing, here you were underweight because you had lost so much weight, but yet you were also going to exercise. I think a lot of people think that exercise is going to make them lose more weight, but you knew that you needed something else, muscle mass, I guess. I mean, something must have been going through your mind how you wouldn't lose more weight, but you could exercise to gain weight. And I just want to tell you that, I don't know if I've ever told you before, but I have now, with so many cancer patients who are underweight, I've helped, especially the men, gain weight by exercising. And at first they think I'm crazy because they're so underweight. And I tell them, no, your body is going to take this exercise as a message to put on weight. So can you speak just a little bit to that, about how you were able to transition your mind to know that you had to exercise?
Well, the quick answer to that, Cindy, is I've learned all my life that you've got to listen to your body. You listen to your body, whether you're healthy or if you're dealing with something like an illness like cancer. You've got to listen to your body. I began to realize as I began to exercise more, my appetite increased. I ate more. And one thing led to another, and I gradually began putting muscle mass back on with the exercise. I had to eat more to take care of that. And then I found out one of the most important things that, of course, you helped me with the protein, carbohydrate, and fat. I began to realize that without a stomach, if I just ate a carbohydrate, anything like sugar, then I could go up to 200 and then go back down, stimulate too much insulin, I'd go into insulin shock. But that's my problem. But I found out if I put protein with that it would neutralize and stabilize my blood sugar level. And that's a message that even healthy people need to understand. Whatever you take in, but eat, liquid, or whatever, mix it with some sort of a protein to stabilize your blood sugar level. It's critical.
Okay, so.
But listen to your body.
And I think, you know, what's so important there is, especially without a stomach, when you eat, your blood sugar is going to go sky high because you're quickly absorbing all this liquid food that's coming down the esophagus and into the small intestine. And then however high your blood sugar goes, it's like priming a pump. It's just going to fall that fast. And then you learn that with visual symptoms first, right? Was it visual symptoms that you realized, wow, my blood sugar is dropping?
Well, that is what I began to realize, and I've tried to talk to my doctors, that I can tell you what my blood sugar is when it's falling. And of course, the worst thing to do is one of those serious medical emergencies is insulin shock. And I can go down to insulin shock, and I found out there were certain specific visual disturbances that I could put and correlate it down to 120, 180, 70, 60. And there were specific visual disturbances. I had one of my doctors put me on there and gave me a test for this. And he said, you are right. You can predict your blood sugar level by these specific visual disturbances. But I couldn't get any of the endocrinologists to be interested in this. I even called the Diabetic Association in Chicago and said, I've learned this. It can be taught to any diabetic. And they said, well, Dr. Patterson, we'll take it under advisement. Well, I know what that means. I never heard from them again.
Well, so now here you are putting on weight by exercising, getting some muscle mass. That increases your appetite. You start to eat more, and then you realize you had to eat every 2 hours or every something like that, every 2 to 3 hours just to keep the blood sugar stable.
Well, every hour or two, I had to take some in to maintain the blood sugar. But since I didn't have a stomach, it took me 5 or 6 times little meals every day to get enough down, to stay alive.
Okay. And so one way to keep the blood sugar from dropping is to make sure protein is in the meal. And I believe you changed the candy that you ate because you still wanted to eat a little bit of candy, right? And you also got a hold of Twin Labs. Can you explain those 2 things to everybody?
Well, Cindy, when I came back from the hospital up there, I said, well, if I'm going to die, I'm going to do things I enjoy, like going to the movies every night. Well, before my surgery, I would always eat a Hershey candy bar when I went to go to the movie. I loved it. But then after the surgery, when I tried to eat a Hershey's candy bar, within 45 minutes, I was going into insulin shock. I wasn't sure what was happening, but I listened to my body. I went out to the concession. I ate and ate and ate, and suddenly my symptoms went fine. That happened several nights at the movies. Then I realized what would happen if I ate the Hershey bar with protein. That's a Snicker bar with peanuts, and voila! That was the most important thing I learned was I've got to have protein with any carbohydrate or fat, and that you helped me with that, and that was a big breakthrough in my diet.
And what I love about that, especially for patients who are listening, is that we know now physiologically that's called attenuating the insulin response, that the protein or the amino acids flatten the insulin response so that the blood sugar's stable.
Exactly.
But it doesn't matter. If you just listen to your body the way you did, you can learn on your own what to eat.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I tell you, Cindy, even healthy people will find out, and they don't recognize it, but they go out there and they eat too much sugar, and they'll have visual disturbances, and they'll have sweating and shake a little bit. But if they're healthy, your body takes over. But they're going into unknown mild insulin shock. Had too much carbohydrate in a short period of time. Even healthy people go through this.
Even healthy people. And for them, what that does is just drives them to eat more sugar and more sugar and more sugar. Whereas if they would just add protein, but especially for the cancer patients, the protein is so healing. Can you just, I love the visual symbolism of things, as I know you do too. And every cancer patient has their own visual symptoms and they should pay attention to them. But there is one unfortunate one that did motivate you a lot. And that was you sitting on the front porch and the weight you had lost and you dropped a tennis ball. Do you recall that one? That's such a powerful visual for me.
That was a low point in my life and the post-op course. Stanford, my doubles partner, came out there. We were sitting on the front porch. I was on the top suit. He was 3 steps down, and he handed me a tennis ball. I squeezed this tennis ball, trying to bring exercise. And then my knees were together, Cindy, and I dropped the ball in my lap with my knees together. The tennis ball went down between my thighs and hit the step below it, which meant all I had was skin and bones. And we both. It was a very emotional time for us.
I'm sure it was, but it also was Stanford who got you back on the tennis court. And I love just the little bit of resistance you gave him at first until you got on the court. Do you remember that period there and what happened?
Yeah, he came into the bedroom and said, Reed, get your tennis clothes on. We're going to hit some tennis balls. I said, Stan, leave me alone. I'm dying. Well, he said, if you die, I want it to be on the tennis court. So he helped me get dressed, got on the tennis court, and something, Cindy, magical began to happen. I saw friends out there. I picked up the Rubico and just rubbed it in my face. It gave me a symbol of what life had been before, and maybe, just maybe, we could have it again. And little by little, he pushed me. We'd play a point. He had chairs sitting on the chair. So if I got too sick or too weak, I could sit down. That went on for weeks. Gradually, my strength came back, and it was without him and without the exercise and without the camaraderie with the other tennis players, I don't know what I would have done. But the exercise.
Yeah. And that's really what I want the listener to hear, is that you didn't just come out of the hospital, get into a gym and magically start playing tennis. It was inch by inch, day by day, as your body could accommodate doing any, because that the patient who is hitting a low point like you hit needs to have the hope that there is a possibility you can slowly but surely get your body back to a healthy state. That's the amazing part that people need to hear. In fact, it was so amazing that people actually thought you'd come back from the dead when you went to your first tournament, right? Was that in New York?
It was embarrassing, Cindy, because they had heard that Stan and I both had died because we had what looked like terminal illnesses.
Right.
And they said, what in the world are you doing here today? We heard you both died 2 years ago. And then Stan said, well, we didn't quite make it that far. That was at the International Grass Court Tournament in Cedarhurst, New York on Long Island. And we came up there. We had never seen a grass court before at all. And so we said, Stan, we don't know what the heck we're doing up here. Little by little, we began to realize that if we could eliminate the bounce on the court, we could play toe-to-toe with any of these guys. Oh. Well, we became the laughing stock of the tournament. But also, they wanted to know what in the world I was drinking. They felt what I was drinking was something illegal, like steroids or amphetamines or whatever. And when I got to the finals in the singles, we won the doubles, and when we did, our opponents came out there and said, bring the dietitian out. These two guys are drinking something illegal. Huh. And they wouldn't give us the winning trophy until she came out and tasted it. Said, well, this tastes like some protein carbohydrate mixture he's got here. A month later, we won the national clay court. Same thing. Uh-huh. And by that time, we were investigated by all of the athletic organizations like the U.S. Olympic Committee. They sent people here in Knoxville to interview us and our doctors. Are they doing something illegal here? They're lucky to be alive, but now they've gone too far. They're winning tournaments again, national tournaments. It upset all of them. And yet, Stan and I, we really couldn't understand how or why it was happening. All we were doing is staying alive. We're alive and loving life.
And loving it, and just keep doing it. And the amazing part, anyone who plays tennis, just for that part, they would find it amazing that having not played tennis tournaments on grass before, you actually couldn't let the ball hit the ground. You had to keep hitting everything out of the air, right? So that's just
when the ball hit the grass, we had no grass court experience. We had never seen a grass court before. And now we're competing with players from England, California, Australia, veteran grass court players. And that we became the laughing stock of the tournament because these two guys in Tennessee have never seen a grass court before. They're like two fools out there. They don't know what to do. Well, the thing is, once we eliminated the bounce on the grass, we came to the net. We were winning match after match after match, and one of them came up. These two guys are ruining the tournament. What are they up to? They won't let the balls hit the grass, except when they serve, they have to let it hit, and they come into the net. Yeah. And we became the laughing stock of the tournament.
That's amazing. And the other part, I think, if everyone thought back to that time, if they were around, it wasn't a normal thing to have a milkshake or anything like that on the court. That, sport shakes had not yet come into fashion. So at that time, no wonder they wanted to investigate it. And you labeled it magic formula. I remember that you gave it a label
Yep.
of the magic formula.
Yep.
And thank God for Twin Labs. Did you have some communication with Twin Labs at the time?
Oh yeah, I told them how important it was, but then the U.S. Olympic Committee and Penn State University and the Larry Cropper Sports Institute in Florida, they sent representatives here to investigate this formula. There's got to be something illegal in it. These two guys are lucky to be alive, but they're not supposed to be winning national tournaments again. And they became a bone of contention. But really, since then, I started something that the commercial people hadn't done before, and that is mix protein with a power drink. They do that now. Well, that's what Stanford and I were using.
Right. So you actually
with protein.
Right. So didn't you try to call University of Florida and tell them their Gatorade had too much sugar and they needed to add protein to it?
Yes, I did it in good faith to the professor down there who pioneered the formula for Gatorade. And I called him. I said, "Sir, you've got a good start here, but without protein in this, your blood sugars are going to vacillate up and down. Add protein to it." Well, he got so upset with me on the phone, he threatened to sue me for evasion of a copyright. So I just gave up after that. But finally, through the years, they all began to realize, though, Cindy, you need protein with a carbohydrate. And without it, you lose control of even a healthy person. You lose control of the level of the blood sugar.
Right. And so for those cancer patients who feel like maybe they're having difficulty getting back into exercising or getting back into shape, I think it's important, if you don't mind my saying, that they know that you did that, whereas you were probably only absorbing half of the nutrients that you ate. Because when I did my research and I spoke to some of the people in the field who were looking at patients with total gastrectomies, everybody knew that a patient with a total gastrectomy, which means the entire stomach is removed, they only absorb 50% of the calories that they even eat. So you had to eat double time at least to even absorb the calories that you needed to then get and play tournament tennis. I mean, that's just amazing. That should be inspiring for anybody.
It was amazing because it began to work. It worked. And you begin to learn, and you listen to your body. You listen to your body. Okay. But exercise. And there are too many people out there that don't exercise at all, Cindy, and they're just asking for health trouble.
And you continued then to play tennis all throughout the year round. You played tennis. You continued on but not just tournament tennis. You played social tennis. You kept tennis in your life on every level, right?
Yeah, but I then supplemented that with additional exercise in order to maintain the weight and the strength to participate in competitive tennis. And
what was that supplemental exercise so that others can have an idea?
Oh my God, I lifted weight. I had an Nordic track downstairs in the basement I mentioned earlier, and I just pushed and pushed and pushed because I knew the secret for me was to remain strong in order to participate in a competitive sport like tournament tennis. And it paid off. It worked. But again, I learned how to listen to my body over and over again.
So does listening to your body also mean when to rest as well? I mean, you're not right, when to rest and how much exercise to do?
I listen to my body. Again, I learned to be very humble by listening to my body. Before my cancer, I didn't really listen to my body very much. I was in good health, but then I began to look at the subtleties of blood sugar, protein, all that after my surgery in order to survive.
Okay.
And other people like you helped me with that dietary supplements and nutrition. It was so hard, very important. Very important.
I'm so amazed because when I moved into Knoxville, you had tried all the other dietitians who lived there, and I was coming out of a research background, and there really wasn't anything published about what a patient with a gastrectomy should eat. So I remember you and I sitting down and saying, well, what how does the stomach work? What are you missing if you're missing part of your esophagus? What are you missing? You're missing the sphincter for one thing, the lower esophageal sphincter. So you would have reflux, but in your case, it's going to be bile reflux because you don't even have a stomach, so it's not acid. And then how would you absorb your food? So we learned all about the dumping syndrome, and then we had to figure out, well, what foods could you actually get a slower motility so that you could absorb some nutrients? And we just sat down and put our heads together with the physiology and food. And that's been done now. That's out now, years later, it's out there and published. But it's still, cancer patients with stomach cancer that I see are still being sent home and told, just figure it out by trial and error. See what you can eat, without telling them that it's not that hard to, if you just see a dietitian, you'll figure out, they know what you should eat. So, but the other thing is, people are probably wondering, how in the world did you normalize your diet? Like, how do you go to a restaurant? What do you do to normalize your life that way? Do you remember those first days of trying to eat at a restaurant? Or
I learned to make a list of restaurants that had food that a post-op gastrectomy syndrome, someone's lost their stomach, could tolerate. I had to pick and choose. And I learned what I could do. Now, when I went across China in 1991, I went into the western part of China where the Uyghurs are, and there I couldn't find what I needed as I went down to a little hotel there. And I picked out this, and this, and just to make sure I had some protein, carbohydrate. And the woman behind the counter kept saying, ish, ish, ish. And I said to the translator, why is she saying ish, ish, ish? Because she said, what you're eating, looks, he said, you American would say, it's yuck, yuck, yuck. This is awful, awful. And she didn't even want to put it on the table. It looked so bad to her. But I knew where the protein was, carbohydrate, and the fat. So you learn to very quickly pick out the food that you know that you need. And, without a stomach, you don't have much of an appetite anyway, Cindy. You just make yourself do it. You make yourself do it.
What was amazing to me is that back in the U.S., I learned with working with you that you actually tolerated fajitas of all things.
I need what now?
You tolerated a fajita. Didn't you used to tolerate fajitas?
Oh, yeah. I was amazed what I could and could not tolerate, and it surprised me. Even today, when something like some of these, like fajitas, I'm amazed I can still tolerate it. But I find out that in there's enough protein to carry me through with it.
Yeah. So to me, that's so important also for patients to hear, because you have to try it. You just put your head together and try things. Don't be afraid to try something. So.
You keep trying, With the other thing, I mentioned to you before that I didn't know whether the Time Magazine article of September the 12th, 2016, the cover story was the exercise cure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, that to me was a scientific by Tarnowski at a place in McGill University in Canada. He's a neurophysiologist, and he gave the strongest argument for exercise I've ever read in my life. I think you were very impressed with that story.
Very much so. I saw the article, and one thing that impressed me was that it's not just an idea at all anymore. It's not a concept. The actual studies, the research he had showing the physiological effects on a variety of processes and a variety of systems in the body that would affect everything from diabetes to arthritis to any sort of inflammatory process to aging itself. I mean, the data is there. And then soon after that, I saw some information from NIH that they were going to start putting a lot of money toward the study of exercise. And I presented a small study at the American Institute of Cancer Research in Washington, D.C., has a meeting every other year. And the best part was when I went there, they had researchers from around the world showing how exercise was reducing the risk of cancer remission. in nearly every type of cancer. So the data is there. It's right in front of us. It's just a matter of getting down to the personal motivation. And that's why I wanted your story to come out, because some of the men I speak with, from prostate cancer, when they are lacking, the hormone to have the muscle strength they used to have, they may also have a lot of fatigue, even lung cancer patients, male patients who are a bit discouraged about getting back out and doing high aerobic activity. These are the kinds of things I hear. So I'm trying to explain to them, nobody is saying you can go right out and run a mile. Everybody is saying do it in increments, get started. You must have started with small weights and worked your way up. You must have measured your progress, because you said it started to work, right?
Right. And the thing that I learned over and over again, like a typical male, I thought I could solve any problem but gut my way through
Yeah.
before I got cancer.
Yeah.
And then I began to realize, how vulnerable I was, and it wasn't paying enough attention to what I ate before my cancer.
Okay.
And then little by little, I began to understand the importance of listening to my body, listen to my body. And then I began to design programs, just strengthening, but with weights, with strengthening. Then the Nordic track, I began to vary the exercise, and I began to realize that exercise not only helps you delay certain health problems or prevent them, but once you get these health problems, if you tailor your exercise with what you physically can do and what your doctor will okay, then go ahead and exercise. To me, it's an important part of the therapy for any kind of illness that we have. But in order to prevent some of these illnesses, like obesity, then you know what we have to do. And you got to exercise, give up the overeating, recognize obesity, which leads often to too many cases of diabetes, and that's their whole series of problems. But we have control over that. We have control, but we need to exercise that control.
Yes, and isn't control, probably that'll bring us into our next meeting, because control was the main factor with stress, right? That's how you alleviate the stress of the situation. So where you can get control.
And I think this, and through the years, Dan Ford and I, because of our success on the tennis court, were written up, by the way, on the cover story of the New York Times sports section in September of 1991. And they said the thing is, Ford and Patterson not dead yet. And they followed us throughout the week. And we were wanted, they couldn't believe what had happened. But the thing, our story gave them inspiration and hope that they hadn't had before. So then after that, we realized we've been contacted literally by hundreds of people around the country. That's not an exaggeration, as you know.
Oh, I know.
And then both of them began writing coping manuals. For cancer, I wrote coping manuals of all kinds. Stanford wrote manuals how he dealt with Wegener syndrome, a rare autoimmune syndrome. So we had a mission in life that we could no longer avoid. And that mission gave us further impetus, stimulation to work with more, learn more, help people in a way that we never thought we could possibly have influenced so many people that way, in a very positive way. But that was a mission in life that our illness created for us.
So I would like to say, because
and that became
where this is going to be posted, could be seen even internationally, because this will be on YouTube, Spotify, several other locations. So for anybody who's listening and is wondering how to contact Dr. Patterson, because I know you are overloaded with a lot of calls for cancer patients, I'm going to give my business number and my email. And that way you can contact me first, and I can reach Dr. Patterson for you, or, share your number or your interest in talking with him. So you can reach me at area code 561-376-0084, or you can email me at creationbalance, all one word, just put the word creation and balance together, at yahoo.com. Because there's a good chance, you know, that we may have somebody listening to this who really specifically wants to ask you a personal question, or, you know, maybe even about their own exercise.
Dr. Collins, as you know, my mission in life now is to work with and help fellow patients, because I know how lost they are, not knowing where to go, right, left, up, down. That's where we patients can help each other.
Mm-hmm.
The doctors get through with the treatment, surgery, chemotherapy, antibiotic, the whole bit, chemotherapy, radiation. But then we patients need to seek out other patients who have similar problems, because we learn from each other. It's a reciprocal arrangement. We're all down in the trenches trying to survive. But if we can talk to fellow patients who've been through or going through what we're going through at that time with our type of cancer, it's amazing what we learn from each other. I'm not out there lecturing to everybody. I learn from them. What I've learned from them, I put in a manual. But they've helped me learn. I've helped them learn. It's reciprocal.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not out there trying to tell people, you know, lecture to them.
Right.
I learn from them. I've learned from them.
Right. And that makes
And that's the
sense.
sense.
I think that's the most important part, is that interdependence. And I just want to say that because I saw you when you were first asked to give a small community talk about your cancer, pull out a wad of little itty bitty papers with list of things that you were supposed to do that day, the last day, I guess, at your work and practice, and your life shifted. All of your career for medicine shut down there, shifted your attention to your survival. And then it opened up because so many people needed to learn about their cancer, and they needed you, and you were learning from them. But it didn't get any less busy, did it? It was just as busy, but you controlled it differently. It wasn't as stressful.
I think, Dr. Collins, as you know, I feel very strongly about individual responsibility. Grow up, be a mature person, but take responsibility. And the most important thing you have for each one of us is our physical and emotional survival. Mm-hmm. That's number one priority in our lives, unless there's some emergency that comes in. But this is something that we share with each other. And these patients that I talk to, this kind of an attitude makes me feel that I don't have to apologize for taking care of myself. Mm-hmm. First, my survival, physical, emotional survival. Then if I build a firm foundation, I've got the resources to go out and be of help to other people. Mm-hmm. And this is important. When I went through the Depression era in the 1930s and 40s, I felt society programmed me to look to the needs of other people first and myself last. No, they got it backwards. If we don't become independent, look to our own physical, emotional survival, then we don't have a firm foundation from which we can go out and be of service, family, friends, and the community at large. And that's what Stand Forward and I learned. Mm-hmm. We've got to pay attention to our own physical and emotional survival, then go out and help other people.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Well, I think that might wrap it up just for this one topic about exercise, unless you can think of any parting words that you'd like to say about exercise or survival with exercising. Anything else you'd like to add?
Yes, just realize that this one thing we just said, that the most important thing about our physical and emotional survival is exercise, exercise, exercise. And before 10,000 years, our ancestors exercised and they didn't have the health problems that we have. Mm-hmm. So now say exercise, exercise.
All right. Okay. Thank you very much.
And don't apologize for it.
Okay. Absolutely. And I have a little motto lately I want to add to that, which I think you would agree. Everything counts, because I have patients who have become debilitated where they can't do physically what they used to do. But I just tell them everything counts, even if it's just arm movement, if they can only sit, everything counts. Increasing your heart rate, increasing your breathing, moving your muscles, increasing your circulation, it all counts. So.
That's right. And you don't have to go from A to Z. No, you just listen to your body and say, what can my body take day by day by day? And you'll figure out what you can do with the help of your doctor if you're sick. And then, but keep moving, keep moving. Our bodies were built for moving, not sitting.
Okay. All right. So on that note, just for today, we're going to close it down. And anybody who's joined us today, come back again. We have several other podcasts already out there, and we'll have several more that have to do with survival, with cancer, with meaning of life, quality of life. We'll be covering every issue. So if there's something you want us to cover, contact me at the number that I said before and let us know. We'll include that in our conversation. So thank you again. I really appreciated you being on today.
It's a pleasure to be with you again.
Bye-bye.
And to share this story.
Okay, thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.